Hi, I'm Maria from theteacherschool.com. I'm a math specialist and an educational therapist. And I work with students in math intervention, and I also work with teachers in math intervention. And today I want to show you a game that I really love that involves fractions, and it provides a bunch of opportunities for you to build number sense. Now, we often talk about number sense the same way that we talk about vitamins. Like, it's great to have, but you can't take number sense as a vitamin. You have to build it over time, and I think that there's this mystique around what it looks like, and I wanted to sort of break that down with you today, especially around fractions, because there's also a lot in fractions. So we're going to play a game. I normally play this game with cards or dice, but I also wanted to give you an opportunity to play it remotely because I don't know when the next time you're going to be able to touch cards or dice. So I wanted to give you another option, provide you with a Google slide that you can copy, download, and use it with your class. And I'm going to start at the very beginning, downloading that slide and using it with your class, with students in intervention, or even in a small group. I think it's a good one. I'm going to give you lots of opportunities to think through how you can build number sense and what kinds of questions you might ask students to help them build number sense. So to start to play this game, I'm just going to copy paste the link I've provided you, hit return, and you're going to get a request to copy the documents. Quick comparison, fraction comparison game, and you're just going to click make a copy. This is going to make it so that no one can mess with the original. You're just going to get a copy, and I can continue to give it to a bunch of people. Whatever you do it to it isn't going to affect the master. You can see here, these are the directions. I'm going to walk you through them, so we don't need to spend any time on this. But if you do decide to give your students a copy of this, so for example, you could make a copy that goes to Jen and Elizabeth, and they're going to play together. You could change it to, Jen and Liz. Oops. Liz. And that would be their copy, and they would go to it together, and they would play with each other, if that makes sense. So the directions are really there for students who are going to be playing it without your support. I'm going to walk you through the directions now as we play the game, but just know that they're there. All right, so this is actually one of my favorite games to play with students, and of course it's a lot more elaborate trying to do it online with remote learning. In real life, this game is just super quick to pick up. So imagine that player A here has half of a deck of cards and player B has half of a deck of cards. It doesn't even have to be evenly split because we're not really playing this like war, we're playing it with points. The first thing I'm going to ask my students to do when they play this game is to just click on edit text and write their name. So I'm going to make my name here. Let's make my opponent's name. I'll do Connor. He's not here right now, but we'll pretend. So there's a couple different ways you could play. Like I said, you could set this up so two students play with each other. You could set this up so it's you versus another student or in a group of students so that it becomes more of an intervention. Or you can play it you versus your whole class. We're going to pretend that it's me versus a specific student, but everything else is sort of applicable. So one of the things I wrote in the directions was to use the text box tool to put your name on round one slide. And I also wrote Arial 18 point only. One of the things that I'm learning is if you give kids a chance to type something, they will spend forever playing with the color and the font and all of that. And that's fine, that's great, they can do that on their own time. I would like for them to play math games. So I've only really given them you'll see, they can't move anything else here. They can move the cards, and the cards can accidentally get resized. So one of the things that I focus on, we move these pieces by grabbing them from the center and not from the sides. I had a student yesterday who really struggled with moving these because she was often pulling from a corner, and you really just need to put your mouse where the numbers are. Because this is a fraction game, you're looking at working with students in 4th grade, 5th grade, maybe even 6th grade on this, so that's not as much of a challenge, but you just do need to be explicit. So the first person goes, well, both players go at the same time. You're going to put the first card on the deck on the numerator and the second card on the deck on the denominator. Connor's going to do the same thing. And I mentioned before how I really like this game as a way to like provide moments of number sense. And here, when you're talking about comparing 1/8 versus 1/5, this is where students are going to reason out why 1/8 is actually smaller than 1/5, even though 8 is a larger number than 5, the absolute value of those two numbers. So this is where you're going to compare the two denominators. You might say, oh, well, if you cut something like a hot dog into 8 pieces, and you cut another hot dog into 5 pieces, those 5 pieces are actually going to be bigger, right? Because you're just sharing it amongst 5 friends. So that kind of reasoning, that conversation, that's where you build number sense. And that's where we want them to defend and think about how they know that they have the bigger piece. So we're going to give this point to Connor because his piece is indeed bigger. His fraction is indeed bigger. And I'm also going to underline compared denominators because that's really our strategy here. Sometimes I notice that some kids might not have these notes highlighted. So what you might want to do is just to let them know when you're showing them how to play the game, or to make sure that they're going in and underlining these. And some kids have this closed like this, so you just need to ask them to just pull those 3 dots up. That's the language I use. Pull the 3 dots up. All right, so Connor won that round. We're going to go to round 2. I'm going to put my cards in. I have 3 something, 3 7ths. So this is another problem where we have the same numerator, but different denominators. I'm going to let them figure that out. And once again, this is an opportunity for Connor or myself, the student, to mention like, oh, well, I have 3 of these pieces and 3 of these pieces, but these pieces are actually bigger because they're 7ths and not 10ths, right? So again, we're comparing denominators. That's the strategy we use, and I just have students underline that. So I can actually go back and look and see if their strategy made sense for the numbers, but also if they indeed played the whole game. Because that's another consideration at this point with distance learning. All right, round 3. So I have 7/5. Connor has 4/6. And for this problem, one way a student might think about this, and again, another place where we talk about, we're going to develop this number sense, is that this fraction 7/5 maybe to some students might look funny, it might be weird, they might say like, I just know, but what you really want to get them to say is that 7/5 is actually greater than 1, and 4/6 is smaller than 1. So our strategy here is we're comparing it to a benchmark fraction, which is 1, right? And again, number sense, knowing that this fraction is greater than 1 and knowing that this fraction is less than 1 is number sense in action. So I get the point, sorry Connor, and we move on to the next one. So we're just going to continue to play, our students are going to continue to play with each other. Here's another moment of consideration. You've got 2/1. So this is another instance where the fraction is greater than 1, right? We're comparing denominators, but this is also one of those things where we could say this is actually 2. So this is a whole number 2, and this is a fractional amount. Again, we're thinking about comparing to a benchmark number, in this case 1. We could also say we compared denominators. They're both kind of, oops, how do I do that? They're both strategies, right? Again, you can see why these are chances for students to really think through the meaning of fractions and how strategies for comparing them. Okay, so we're just going to skip ahead. For this one, I might think about benchmark fractions, maybe something like what would make a half. Again, let's think about this in terms of building number sense. So a question you might ask a student on this one is, what's half of 9? And they might say, oh, I don't know, 4.5. It might take you a minute to get there. Half of 7, 3.5, right? So this would actually, this number here, 5/7 is going to be greater than half, or 2/9 is going to be less than half. And that would be an instance where we would use benchmark fractions to help us decide which one is greater. Some students might use a common denominator for this one. This is one of those moments where showing them how to use the benchmark strategy and having them get why the benchmark strategy is helpful, that's where you're going to be building number sense, where finding a common denominator is going to be unwieldy. First of all, a common denominator of 9 and 7 is unwieldy. But the other piece of it is it doesn't really build number sense in the same way that thinking through the this being less than a half and this being more than a half will. So that's our last one, and I like that one a lot. I think that one's probably my favorite one. And this could be the one that you go back to as a whole class and talk through why that one is particularly meaty, right? And the different strategies, you could turn it into a number talk, right? The different strategies students might use to compare those two numbers. And what you really want by having the different strategies, presenting the different strategies, is for a student to go, oh, I didn't think about how I could just like imagine where a half is and see that 2/9 is less than a half. So you really want to get a kid to think about how that strategy is much more efficient and based on reason rather than the laborious task of making everything into 60/3. Okay, so that is the quick fraction comparison game. I think that it is a worthwhile endeavor. If you are looking for more opportunities to play games remotely with your students, check out these 2 videos here in my channel. Thanks.